So an accent is features of your language that are to do with the way that you sound. So, for instance, an accent feature that's becoming quite prominent in the UK currently is something called TH fronting. So this is where you get a sound where you would have TH in the spelling being pronounced as a F or a V. So you get things like think for think, or brother for brother. And that's an accent feature because it's to do with the particular sound segment of the way in which you pronounce that sound. Dialect is bigger than accent in that it can also include sound features, but it also includes what we would think of as grammatical items, so the way in which we produce particular words or the way in which we put sentences together. So a grammatical item would be something like what we would call multiple negation. So multiple negation is where you form a negative by having more than one negative form in the sentence. So in standard English, you would say something like, I don't like you anymore. But in a non-standard dialect, you might say something like, I don't like you no more. So that would be a dialect feature because it's to do with the grammar, the way in which you put your sentence together, rather than just the way in which you sound. So standard English is the dialect of English that's seen to be it's perceived to be the most correct and the most standard form, and it's certainly the form of English that we're expected to write in if we're writing any kind of official documentation or schoolwork, for instance. And standard English is derived from a mixture of different dialects that were based around London and in the southeast in around the 1500s onwards. And it came about as a consequence of various processes. Things like the language we established printing in the language, so it became much easier to codify the language, that is, to set into rules the way in which particular constructions were put together or sentences put together. Then it became easier to print, it became easier to disseminate, distribute information to lots of people, and therefore it was easier to set a fixed way of using writing and the way in which we interact. In terms of where standard English is going, there's a sense by which lots of people feel that we have to protect language and stop language from changing, and that's particularly the case with standard English because it's seen to be the norm that we should all adhere to as we write and interact with one another. But standard English actually changes all the time, and we see evidence for that quite regularly. So a good example would be like the word gay. So historically, gay meant to be cheerful, to be associated with something positive in that sense. It's then shifted quite dramatically to now refer to somebody who's homosexual, and then it's even starting to change in a slightly different way, in a really quite negative way, to refer to something that's not very good or not very interesting. And that's actually in usage, we could say, in standard English, in the way in which we use language, but it's clearly changed over time. So the idea that standard English is fixed is really not based on very good evidence about the way in which language adapts over time.